In line with our policy of regularly bringing you interesting technology disruptors, either as a possible investment or simply as a way of helping you try to keep up with what's going on in a fast-changing world, we invited the CEO of a company called Linius Technologies, Chris Richardson, into our downtown Hawthorne studio. Linius is a video technology play, which is kind of interesting because the internet is rapidly turning into a video distribution tool and not much else. So anyone who can improve it is probably worth a look. So first, what is it?
If you think about video on the internet today, the one thing that you can't do is take pieces and parts from one video and pieces and parts from another video and stream them together seamlessly. Of course, you can create a new video. You can edit these things, cut them apart, piece them together, but you can't just reach into one video and reach into another video and put them together. And that core function, that basically treating video as data, where we can make index calls into the video itself like you would into a database, is the core of Linius technology. So it's kind of like, I don't know, for 50,000 years, we were baking bread before we invented sliced bread. But it's an obvious thing to do, but nobody thought of it because you already had a bread, so why would you slice it? Kind of the same thing here. You know, the history of video is such that when computers started to come of age in the 70s and 80s, the producers of videos took all of their existing workflows of cutting film and putting film in chemicals and whatnot into the digital era. And they produced digital films, laser discs, big giant blocks of encoded data. And then when the internet came along, those things already existed as video, as film, as a thing. And so the internet technologists did what they do, and they went about solving the problem of how do we take this thing and make it available to users. But nobody ever took the step back to say, hey, it's not actually special because it's a video. There's just data inside. And if we ignore the fact that it's a video, we can do 50 years of computer science, database management, big data, all these things that we know, and really just nobody thought of it before.
Next important question, what is Linius's patent protection like?
We've been fully granted patents on the base technology in every major market. So US, Canada, mainland China, Hong Kong, South Korea, Australia, India, the EU, basically everywhere in the developed world, fully granted patent. And it's actually quite exciting because it's not, a lot of times in the software world, you hear about sort of patents of algorithms or things that are, it's unclear if they're patentable at all, really, and what's going to happen with them in the long run. And one of the beauties of Linius technology is that it's not that kind of patent. It's a true invention to treat this stuff differently. And so, I'm not saying we invented the light bulb, but it's a good metaphor, right? If somebody comes along and invents the incandescent light bulb, it's not like Coca-Cola where you could change a few ingredients and make Pepsi. You have to come and have a new invention. You have to invent the fluorescent light bulb.
No, but surely someone can come along and say, I'm going to treat video as data.
No, we
as you do. But video is data, as you say.
Yeah.
How can you prevent somebody else treating it as data?
So the thing to understand is that video isn't data. Of course, it is data, but from the perspective of the actual files that get shipped around, everything in video is encoded. And there's many competing standards out there for encoding video. But basically, what it does is it says, okay, in some algorithmic way, we're going to say in the upper left corner of the screen, put a red pixel, and next to that, put a green pixel, and so on and so on and so on and so on. And that's the data, right? And then there's a container that wraps around that, which tells that data how to play. And there's MP4, there's a bunch of different standards that you'll see, the file name extension, the .mov, the
WAV.
WAV, exactly. Different ways of wrapping the core data so that it can play out in your player. Now, from Linius perspective, what we really do is go in and remove that wrapper. We don't care that it's whatever wrapper container around the thing. We only care about the core data. And we're not actually changing the encryption of the data at all or the encoding of the data at all. We work with very standard MP4 data, which is 80% of the video on the internet. But once we remove that wrapper, and I guess that's the secret, right? To remove the wrapper and just literally have raw binary data, then we can say on the fly, create a new wrapper, which we send to your web browser or your TV or your phone or whatever, that says, we're not going to send you a bunch of data from here. we're going to send you a bunch of data from point A and point B and point C, and the player just plays it today because it's a standard MP4 data.
Next, and perhaps most important, is what exactly is the business? How does Linius make money? Well, first, by lowering costs.
There's a stat that says the average broadcaster is doing something like 120 different transcodes.
A transcode is where a video is redone so it can play on different devices and in different formats.
Now, we're not going to bring that down to one transcode because you still have to do some technical things to make it play out over low bandwidth networks or high bandwidth networks. But we're seeing that we think there's about an 8x reduction in transcoding required for any of these guys that are still doing multiple MP4 transcodes for multiple devices. So, an 8x cost reduction is non-trivial in any business. And then that sort of has a carry-on effect. If you look at the way the internet works, any given video gets copied hundreds and thousands of times around the internet to make it easy for us to watch, to make it quick to load, to make it closer to the consumer. If you're doing those hundreds or thousands of copies of those hundreds of original transcode files, then we're talking exabytes of storage out at the edge of the network. And again, sort of that same roughly 8x reduction in those storage costs.
Second business is working with security companies that have to review lots of video footage to catch the bad guys.
You can imagine us working with security companies to enable somebody who's reviewing footage in London to cut that transaction time from when the analyst gets the footage from hours or days down to seconds. And security is a $60 billion US market today. And with everybody so focused on what's happening in the world, all the terrible things happening, imagine the power of, instead of catching somebody 2 days after the fact, because we have cameras and we found them, maybe there's a chance that you can intervene up front if we're getting this literally in seconds or minutes instead of hours or days.
And the third thing, well, I'll let Chris Richardson explain it.
So the third one, which is actually probably our closest path to commercialization, was the one you brought up about advertising. I think everybody's familiar with the phenomenon today that you sit down at work and you Google something, like looking for a vacation in Bali. And then you leave the office and you pull out your phone and you look at Facebook, and lo and behold, there's an ad for hotels in Bali in my Facebook feed. Right? It's because all that information already exists on the internet. Everybody's talking to each other. And we've moved from an era of demographically targeted ads to personally, individually targeted ads. Cable TV can't do that today for a wide range of technical reasons. But what it boils down to basically is the inability to do this core thing that Linius does, to take video from one place and video from another place and merge them into live streams. Not live video, but broadcast streams. So we're going to actually be demonstrating September 9th at IBC, which is one of the world's 3 largest broadcaster sort of technical conferences, in conjunction with our partner Digisoft, who makes cable TV management software. The ability for cable TV stations for the first time to do individually targeted ad placement.
And finally, the critical question, what's Chris Richardson's cash situation? The company did a backdoor listing in May through Firestrike Resources and raised $3.5 million at a price of 5 cents. This morning the price is 6.8 cents, having briefly got to the giddy height of 8 cents in July. Clearly a long way to go.
We're currently running at $150K a month burn rate, so we have almost 2 years of cash in the bank at this point. So we're not concerned about the fact that we don't have revenue. At this point, it's about building market awareness and getting these partnerships done in each of these industries so that we can launch kind of early to mid next year and really hit the ground running.
So there you have it. Linius Technologies, an Australian invention running on the smell of an oily rag to take its idea to the world. Who says this country can't do innovation?